Before Alex Lifeson became the unmistakable guitarist of Rush, he was simply a young musician trying to discover what the electric guitar could do. His journey would eventually lead to one of progressive rock's most respected bands, decades of albums, enormous stages, and a guitar style that influenced musicians around the world. But behind the familiar image of Lifeson is a story that is more layered than many casual listeners realize. What happens when an artist spends decades building a sound that becomes inseparable from a legendary band? And what happens when that chapter begins to change? To understand the real story behind Alex Lifeson, we have to look beyond the famous riffs and explore the creative decisions, unexpected turns, and quieter moments that shape his remarkable career. Lifeson grew up in Toronto, Canada, and became interested in guitar during his teenage years. Like many young musicians of his generation, he was inspired by the growing sound of rock music. But Lifeson was not interested in simply copying what he heard. He wanted to experiment, combining melody, rhythm, atmosphere, and technical playing into something that felt personal. That curiosity eventually brought him together with drummer Neil Peart and bassist vocalist Geddy Lee in Rush. The combination created something unusual. Lee's distinctive voice and bass playing, Peart's extraordinary drumming and songwriting, and Lifeson's guitar work gave the group an identity that was difficult to duplicate. But that wasn't the full story. Lifeson's importance to Rush went far beyond playing memorable guitar parts. He helped create the musical space around Lee and Peart. Sometimes he filled the arrangement with layered sounds and complex passages. At other moments, he stepped back and allowed the rhythm section to carry the music. That balance became one of his greatest strengths. During Rush's most ambitious years, Lifeson explored different guitar tones, effects, textures, and arrangements. His playing could move from powerful riffs to delicate atmospheric passages without losing the identity of the song. For listeners discovering progressive rock for the first time, this was one of the reasons Rush could sound both technically impressive and emotionally accessible. Few people noticed how much restraint was involved. A technically gifted guitarist can always add more notes. Lifeson often chose something more difficult, deciding what the song actually needed. His playing supported the larger composition rather than constantly competing for attention. As Rush continued evolving, so did Lifeson. The band experimented with synthesizers, changing production styles, shorter arrangements, and different musical directions. Each era created new expectations, and Lifeson had to adapt without losing his own voice. What happened next changed the meaning of his career. When Rush eventually concluded its touring chapter, Lifeson entered a very different period. For decades, his musical identity had been closely connected to the same band and the same creative partnership. Suddenly, there was more space to explore other ideas. Rather than simply repeating the past, Lifeson showed interest in new musical projects and collaborations. His later work demonstrated that his creativity was never limited to one formula. For longtime Rush fans, this became an important reminder. Alex Lifeson was not simply the guitarist from Rush. He was a musician with his own personality, instincts, humor, and curiosity. His influence can still be heard in generations of guitarists who discovered that progressive rock did not have to sacrifice emotion for complexity. Lifeson showed that sophisticated guitar playing could serve a song while still giving the listener something unexpected to discover. And perhaps the most meaningful part of his story is the way his role changed over time. Early in his career, he was searching for recognition. At the height of Rush, he was helping define an entire musical language. Later, he had the freedom to explore what came after that achievement. That transition can feel bittersweet for fans, but it also reveals something important about artistic legacy. A career does not have to remain frozen at its most famous moment. Alex Lifeson's story is ultimately about evolution. He began as a young guitarist inspired by the possibilities of rock, became a central architect of Rush sound, and eventually reached a point where his creative journey could move beyond the expectations of the past. His greatest achievement may not be one particular solo or album. It may be the complete musical world he helped build alongside his longtime bandmates. For millions of listeners, those sounds remain connected to discovery, imagination, and the feeling that rock music could go somewhere completely unexpected. And that is why Alex Lifeson's legacy continues to matter. His career reminds us that even after an artist reaches the highest level, the most interesting question is often not what they have already accomplished, but where their creativity might lead next.